Hello, Ancient Earth Documentary here with a new podcast episode. Your teeth are older than you think. Not your actual teeth, the ones sitting in your mouth right now, but the blueprint, the architecture, the design that's been passed down, refined, and occasionally botched through 2 million years of human evolution. Open your mouth and you're looking at a fossil record, a living archive of what it took to survive, when survival wasn't guaranteed. Every ridge, every root, every awkward wisdom tooth trying to shove its way into a jaw that stopped making room for it thousands of years ago, they all tell a story. And that story starts long before cities, agriculture, or anything resembling civilization. 2 million years ago, your ancestors weren't worrying about cavities or whether their smile looked good in pictures. They were using their teeth as tools, weapons, and the primary interface between their bodies and a world that wanted them dead. What you ate determined whether you lived long enough to reproduce. How you ate it shaped your entire skull. And your teeth, those small, hard, unforgiving structures, recorded everything. They captured diet, health, social status, and even the environment you grew up in, all without you ever knowing. Paleontologists can look at a single molar from a hominin who died 2 million years ago and reconstruct their childhood, their struggles, and the exact moment their body decided they weren't getting enough nutrients. Your teeth don't lie. They can't. They're too busy being honest in ways your bones never could be. The thing is, teeth evolve slower than almost anything else in the human body. While our brains ballooned and our limbs stretched and our faces flattened, our teeth stayed remarkably conservative. They didn't get the memo, which means the teeth you're walking around with today are still designed for a world that no longer exists. A world where chewing took hours, not minutes. Where food fought back. Where your molars had to crush bone, strip bark, and crack seeds harder than anything you'll ever bite into at a restaurant. You're carrying hardware from the Pleistocene, and it shows. But let's rewind. 2 million years ago, the genus Homo was just getting started. Homo habilis, one of the earliest members of our lineage, was walking around East Africa with a dental toolkit that looked nothing like ours. Their teeth were larger, their jaws more robust, and their bite force could make a modern dentist weep. These weren't the teeth of someone eating soft bread and smoothies. These were teeth built for a rough, fibrous, unforgiving diet. Roots, tubers, raw meat, and whatever else could be scavenged or hunted. Every meal was a workout. Chewing wasn't passive. It was survival. And here's where it gets interesting. Teeth don't just reflect what you eat. They shape how you eat, which shapes what you can eat, which shapes where you can live. It's a feedback loop. Early hominins with slightly smaller teeth couldn't process the same foods as their cousins with bigger molars. So they adapted. They started using tools to pre-process food, smashing it with rocks, cutting it with sharp flakes of stone. This meant their teeth didn't have to work as hard. Over generations, natural selection started favoring smaller teeth because the investment in growing and maintaining massive molars wasn't worth it anymore. The tools were doing the job. This is when human evolution stopped being just biological and started being technological. Your teeth remember that shift. Fast forward a few 100,000 years, and Homo erectus enters the scene, taller, smarter, and with teeth that were noticeably smaller than their predecessors. Not because they were weaker, but because they were more efficient. Homo erectus discovered fire, or at least learned to control it. And fire changed everything. Cooking softened food, broke down tough fibers, killed parasites, and made calories easier to extract. Suddenly, you didn't need giant molars to survive. You needed a brain that could figure out how to keep a fire going. The teeth got smaller, the brain got bigger, and the two events are directly connected. But even as teeth shrank, they didn't lose their importance. If anything, they became more specialized. The incisors at the front of your mouth, those flat blade-like teeth, They're designed for slicing, cutting through meat, biting into fruit, stripping leaves. The canines, those slightly pointy ones next to them, they're holdovers from a time when our ancestors needed to tear and grip. Ours are pathetic compared to a chimpanzee's, but they're still there, a ghost of our past. Then you've got the premolars and molars in the back, built for grinding, crushing, and turning tough food into something your stomach can handle. Every tooth in your mouth has a job, and that job was assigned millions of years ago. Now, teeth don't just tell us what ancient humans ate. They tell us when they ate it, how often, and whether they were stressed while doing it. Tooth enamel grows in layers, kind of like tree rings. When you're a child and your teeth are forming, every disruption to your health gets recorded. Malnutrition, illness, trauma, it all leaves a mark. Scientists call these marks enamel hyperplasias, and they're visible under a microscope as tiny grooves or pits in the enamel surface. If a 2 million-year-old hominin tooth shows a hyperplasia, it means that individual went through a rough patch as a kid. Maybe food was scarce. Maybe they were sick. Either way, their teeth remember. Teeth also preserve chemical signatures from the environment. The isotopes in your enamel come from the water you drank and the food you ate while your teeth were forming. By analyzing these isotopes, researchers can figure out whether an ancient human grew up in a forest, a grassland, or near a lake. They can tell if the climate was wet or dry. They can even track migration patterns by comparing the isotopes in different teeth, which form at different ages. Your teeth are a diary you didn't know you were keeping. But there's something else teeth reveal, something more subtle: social structure. In many primate species, tooth size and wear patterns differ between males and females. Males often have larger canines because they use them in displays of dominance or in fights over mates. In early hominins, this size difference, called sexual dimorphism, started to shrink. By the time you get to Homo erectus, male and female teeth are much more similar in size. That suggests a shift in social behavior. Less direct competition between males, more cooperation, possibly the beginnings of pair bonding and shared child rearing. All of this can be inferred from teeth. And then there's wear. Ancient human teeth are worn down in ways modern teeth almost never are. The enamel is ground flat from years of chewing tough, gritty food. Sometimes the wear is so extreme that the tooth is worn down to the root, exposing the pulp cavity. That would have been agonizing, but there's no evidence these individuals stopped eating. They just kept going. Pain was part of life. Infection was common. And yet, some of these individuals lived for years with severely damaged teeth, which tells us something important. They had help. Someone was sharing softer food with them, or pre-processing it, or caring for them in some way. Teeth reveal compassion. Let's talk about one specific example. In 2015, researchers analyzed the teeth of a Homo habilis individual from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. This individual lived roughly 1.8 million years ago. By studying the wear patterns and isotopic signatures in their teeth, scientists determined that this person's diet shifted dramatically around age 3. Before that, they were likely still nursing, getting nutrition from their mother. After that, they transitioned to solid food, probably a mix of plant material and small amounts of meat. But here's the kicker. The isotopes showed that the food they ate came from a surprisingly wide range of environments: forests, wetlands, open grasslands. This individual, as a child, was being fed by adults who were traveling long distances to gather food. That's not just survival, that's strategy. Teeth also preserve evidence of injuries. Chips, cracks, and fractures tell us when someone bit down on something harder than expected. Maybe a bone fragment. Maybe a stone accidentally mixed into their food. Some teeth show grooves worn into the enamel at strange angles, caused by using teeth as tools, holding hides while scraping them, gripping plant fibers while twisting them into cordage. Your ancestors didn't have pockets or extra hands, so they used their mouths. The evidence is carved into their teeth. By about 500,000 years ago, the human dental blueprint was mostly locked in. Homo heidelbergensis, one of our direct ancestors, had teeth that look remarkably modern, smaller than earlier species, but still robust enough to handle a varied diet. These were people who lived in diverse environments, from Europe to Africa, and their teeth adapted to local conditions. Populations in colder climates showed slightly different wear patterns than those in tropical regions, reflecting differences in available food. Teeth were still evolving, but slowly, incrementally, fine-tuning rather than overhauling. Then came Homo sapiens, us, and our teeth continued the trend towards smaller size. But here's where things get weird. Our teeth didn't stop evolving, but the environment they evolved for vanished almost overnight. With the invention of agriculture about 10,000 years ago, human diets shifted dramatically. Grains became the staple food, soft, processed, and much easier to chew than anything our ancestors had eaten before. Suddenly, those big, tough molars weren't necessary. But evolution doesn't work that fast. You can't redesign a jaw in a few hundred generations. So we're stuck with teeth that are slightly too large for our smaller jaws, which is why wisdom teeth get impacted and why orthodontists have job security. But even in the modern era, teeth continue to record our lives. Dentists can look at your teeth and tell if you grind them at night, if you drink a lot of soda, if you've been sick recently. Teeth are still honest. They're still keeping records. The difference is, now we can read them while you're still alive. What makes teeth so special, so uniquely informative, is their durability. Bones decay. Soft tissue vanishes almost immediately. But teeth, coated in enamel, the hardest substance your body produces, can last for millions of years. They survive burial, fossilization, and the crushing weight of geological time. When paleontologists find ancient human remains, teeth are often the only thing left, and from those teeth they reconstruct entire lives, childhoods, diets, environments, health, movement, culture, all from a handful of molars. So when you look in the mirror and see your teeth, you're not just seeing the result of genetics and dental hygiene. You're seeing 2 million years of evolutionary compromise. You're seeing the legacy of ancestors who chewed their way through ice ages and droughts and prey that didn't want to be eaten. You're seeing tools that were never designed for the world you live in now, but are doing their best anyway. Your teeth are a time capsule, and they're older than almost anything else about you. Human teeth versus Neanderthal teeth. 2 million years of evolution didn't follow a straight line. While Homo sapiens were developing their own dental quirks, other human species were doing the same. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the teeth of Neanderthals. If you could sit a Neanderthal down in a dentist's chair and compare their teeth to yours, the differences would be stark. And those differences tell us exactly how 2 closely related species adapted to wildly different lives. Neanderthal front teeth were massive, not just bigger than ours, but disproportionately so. Their incisors were thick, heavily worn, and often chipped in ways that suggest they were using their teeth as a third hand. Neanderthals lived in Ice Age Europe, hunting large game and surviving in some of the harshest climates humans have ever endured. They didn't have the luxury of advanced tools for every task, so they improvised. They used their teeth to grip hides while scraping them, to soften leather, to strip bark and plant fibers. The wear patterns on Neanderthal incisors show horizontal scratches, made by pulling tough materials between their teeth repeatedly. It's called the stuff and cut technique, and it left permanent marks. But it wasn't just about tool use. Neanderthal teeth also reveal their diet. Isotope analysis shows they ate a lot of meat, more than early Homo sapiens in the same regions. But they also ate plants, nuts, and whatever else they could find. Some Neanderthal teeth contain traces of cooked grains and medicinal plants, which suggests they had knowledge of food processing and possibly even herbal remedies. Their teeth weren't just tools. They were survival instruments, recording every desperate meal and clever adaptation. Modern human teeth, by comparison, are smaller, weaker, and less worn. Our incisors are narrow. Our molars are compact. We don't use our teeth as tools because we invented better ones. But that shift came with a cost. Our teeth became more vulnerable to decay, more prone to crowding, and less capable of handling the rough, fibrous foods our ancestors ate without a second thought. The differences go deeper than size. Neanderthal dental development was faster than ours. Their teeth erupted earlier, which means they reached physical maturity sooner. Some researchers believe this reflects the harsh reality of their lives. You couldn't afford a long childhood when survival demanded constant effort. Modern humans, on the other hand, have one of the slowest dental development schedules of any primate. Our wisdom teeth don't even try to come in until our late teens or early 20s. And by then, there's often no room left for them. That's because our jaws shrank faster than our teeth did. Neanderthals had larger, more robust jaws that could accommodate all their teeth without issue. Their faces were built for chewing power. Thick brow ridges, forward projecting mid-faces, massive jaw muscles anchored to heavy bone. They could generate bite forces we can only dream of. Modern humans traded that power for something else: speech. Our smaller jaws, flatter faces, and repositioned tongues gave us the anatomy needed for complex language. We sacrificed bite strength for the ability to communicate abstract ideas, plan coordinated hunts, and pass down knowledge across generations. Neanderthals could talk, but their vocal anatomy was different, less flexible, more constrained. They likely couldn't produce the same range of sound. And in the long run, that difference may have mattered more than jaw strength. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite these differences, Neanderthal teeth and human teeth are similar enough that scientists can trace our shared ancestry. Both species descended from Homo heidelbergensis, a common ancestor that lived around 600,000 years ago. When populations split, one group stayed in Europe and became Neanderthals. The other migrated into Africa and became us. And for a long time, those two groups evolved separately. Then, around 60,000 years ago, modern humans left Africa and encountered Neanderthals in the Middle East and Europe. They didn't just meet, they interbred. We know this because Neanderthal DNA still exists in modern humans. If you're of European or Asian descent, roughly 2% of your genome came from Neanderthals, and some of that DNA affects your teeth. Certain genes linked to enamel thickness, tooth size, and even the shape of your molars can be traced back to Neanderthal ancestors. So when you bite into an apple, there's a chance you're using dental traits inherited from a species that went extinct 30,000 years ago. Neanderthal teeth also reveal something unexpected: care. Some Neanderthal skeletons show signs of dental disease, abscesses, and severe tooth wear. But those individuals survived for years after losing teeth or developing infections. That means someone was helping them, feeding them softer foods, sharing resources, looking after them when they couldn't fend for themselves. Teeth don't just record biology, they record compassion. And in that sense, Neanderthals weren't so different from us. What teeth reveal about migration teeth are travelers. They move with us, record where we've been, and leave behind clues for anyone willing to look. When ancient humans migrated out of Africa, their teeth came along, and those teeth absorbed the chemical signatures of every place they lived. By studying the isotopes locked inside enamel, scientists can reconstruct migration routes that no written record will ever capture. Strontium is the key. This element exists in soil and water, and its isotopic ratio varies depending on the local geology. When you drink water or eat plants grown in a specific region, strontium from that environment gets incorporated into your teeth as they form. Once it's locked in, it doesn't change. Your childhood teeth carry the signature of the place you grew up, even if you spent the rest of your life somewhere else. This technique has rewritten our understanding of ancient human movement. In the Afar region of Ethiopia, researchers found fossilized teeth from early Homo sapiens that contained strontium isotopes mismatched with the local geology. That means these individuals weren't born where they died. They traveled, possibly hundreds of kilometers. And they did it over 300,000 years ago, long before we thought humans were capable of long-distance migration. In Europe, Neanderthal teeth tell similar stories. Some individuals moved between valleys and mountain ranges, following game herds or seasonal resources. Others stayed in one place their entire lives. The isotopic data reveals patterns of mobility that suggest Neanderthals had complex social structures, possibly trading mates between groups to avoid inbreeding. Teeth also track the spread of agriculture. When humans transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming around 10,000 years ago, their diets changed dramatically, and that shift left permanent marks. Permanent. Hunter-gatherer teeth show high levels of strontium variation because these people moved constantly, eating from different landscapes. Farmer teeth, by contrast, show much less variation. They stayed in one place, eating crops grown in the same soil year after year. But there's a twist. Early farmers had terrible teeth. Hunter-gatherers, despite lacking toothbrushes, had relatively low rates of cavities. Their diets were varied, fibrous, and low in sugar. Farmers, on the other hand, ate grains. Lots of grains. Bread, porridge, fermented mush. All of it packed with carbohydrates that oral bacteria loved. Cavities exploded. Abscesses became common. Tooth loss increased. The skeletons of early agricultural societies show dental disease rates that rival modern populations before fluoride. Agriculture gave humanity stability, surplus, and civilization, but it wrecked our teeth. And the evidence is written in enamel. Migration studies using teeth have also solved historical mysteries. In ancient Rome, researchers analysed the teeth of people buried in mass graves and discovered that many weren't local. They came from North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Rome wasn't just a political empire. It was a melting pot, drawing people from across the known world. And their teeth proved it. In the Americas, teeth have traced the movement of the first people to cross the Bering Land Bridge. Isotopic analysis shows that some individuals travelled thousands of miles during their lifetimes, following coastlines and river systems as they spread across 2 continents. Teeth carried those journeys with them, recording each stop along the way. Even in recent history, teeth reveal migration. Victims of the transatlantic slave trade, buried in unmarked graves, have been identified by the isotopic signatures in their teeth. Those signatures point to specific regions of West Africa, giving names and origins to people whose identities were stolen. Teeth remember when everything else is lost. What makes this possible is enamel's permanence. It doesn't remodel, it doesn't heal. Once it forms, it's a closed system, a snapshot of a specific time and place. And because enamel resists decay better than almost any other biological material, it survives long after bones crumble and DNA degrades. Teeth are time capsules you carry in your mouth. They don't just tell you where you've been, they tell the world where you came from. The tooth fairy myth and why kids lose teeth. Losing baby teeth is such a universal childhood experience that we've built entire myths around it. The tooth fairy, the tooth mouse. Traditions that turn something slightly unsettling into a celebration. But why do we lose our teeth in the first place? And why does it happen when it does? The answer starts with size. Baby teeth, also called deciduous teeth, are small. They have to be. A newborn's jaw is tiny and there's no room for adult-sized teeth. So, humans, like most mammals, are born with a starter set. 20 teeth total. They begin erupting around 6 months and finish by age 3. These teeth are functional. They let toddlers chew solid food and learn to speak. But they're temporary. As a child grows, so does their jaw. By age 6, the jaw has expanded enough to accommodate larger permanent teeth. But there's a problem. The baby teeth are still there, occupying space. So the body initiates a process called resorption. Specialized cells called odontoclasts begin breaking down the roots of baby teeth from below. Slowly, methodically, they dissolve the connective tissue holding each tooth in place. The tooth loosens. Eventually, it falls out. And beneath it, a permanent tooth is already waiting. This process happens in stages over several years. The first baby teeth to fall out are usually the lower front incisors, around age 6. The last are the second molars, which hang on until age 12 or 13. By the time a teenager's mouth is fully mature, they'll have 32 permanent teeth, assuming wisdom teeth come in. The timing isn't random. It's coordinated with jaw growth and brain development. Losing teeth too early can cause alignment problems. Losing them too late can result in overcrowding. The process is a biological ballet, choreographed by genetics and environmental cues. But here's something most people don't realize. Baby teeth aren't weaker than adult teeth. Enamel is enamel. What makes baby teeth more vulnerable to cavities is their size. They're smaller, so decay reaches the pulp faster. And because kids aren't always great at brushing, bacteria have a field day. The tooth fairy myth likely originated in Europe, though its exact roots are murky. In some cultures, lost teeth were thrown onto roofs to encourage strong adult teeth to grow in. In others, they were buried or burned. The idea of exchanging a tooth for money is relatively modern, probably emerging in early 20th century America, as parents looked for ways to make the experience less frightening. And it works. Losing a tooth can be scary for a child. There's blood. There's a gap. Something that was part of you is suddenly gone. The tooth fairy transforms that into a transaction, a rite of passage, a reason to smile instead of cry. But beneath the myth is a biological marvel. The human body is replacing part of itself, growing new structures from within, coordinating bone, blood, and tissue to make space for something better. It's regeneration on a small scale, and it happens so smoothly that most kids barely think about it, except when the tooth is hanging by a thread and they're wiggling it obsessively, hoping it falls out before dinner. Not all mammals lose their teeth this way. Sharks, for instance, replace teeth continuously throughout their lives. They have conveyor belts of teeth, with new ones constantly moving forward to replace old ones. Elephants do something similar. They grow 6 sets of molars over their lifetime, each set larger than the last. When the final set wears out, the elephant can no longer chew properly, and that's often what kills them. Humans are stuck with 2 sets, baby teeth and adult teeth. That's it. Lose an adult tooth, and it's gone forever. This makes dental care critical in a way it isn't for sharks or elephants. We don't get do-overs, which is why ancient humans, despite lacking modern dentistry, took tooth loss seriously. Archaeological evidence shows that people have been trying to fix dental problems for thousands of years. The Etruscans made gold bridges. The Mayans drilled holes in teeth and inserted jade. Ancient Egyptians used crushed eggshells as a primitive toothpaste. They understood what we still know today. Teeth matter, and losing them, whether as a child or an adult, changes everything. Why wisdom teeth exist and why they cause problems. Wisdom teeth are the most pointless, painful reminder that evolution doesn't care about your comfort. These third molars erupt in your late teens or early 20s, long after the rest of your adult teeth have settled in. And more often than not, they cause problems. Crowding, impaction, infection, pain. Millions of people have them surgically removed every year. So, why do we have them at all? The answer lies in our ancestors' jaws. Early humans had larger jaws and bigger faces. Their diets required serious chewing power, tough roots, raw meat, fibrous plants, seeds. All of it demanded molars that could grind and tear without wearing out too quickly. Wisdom teeth were the backup set. By the time someone reached their late teens, their first and second molars had already endured years of heavy use. Wisdom teeth erupted just in time to take over the workload. They weren't a design flaw, they were a practical solution. But then something changed. Human jaws started shrinking. This happened gradually over thousands of years as our diets softened. Cooking made food easier to chew. Agriculture introduced grains that didn't require the same grinding force as wild plants. Tool use reduced the need for teeth as multi-purpose implements. Our faces became smaller, flatter, more refined, and our jaws followed. The problem is, our teeth didn't get the memo. Evolution doesn't work that fast. Teeth are controlled by different genes than jaws, and those genes haven't caught up with the changes in our skull structure. So now we're stuck with a mismatch. 32 teeth trying to fit into a jaw that comfortably holds 28. Wisdom teeth are the casualties of this evolutionary lag. When there's no room for them, they try to erupt anyway. Sometimes they come in sideways. Sometimes they get stuck beneath the gum line, pressing against other teeth. Sometimes they only partially emerge, creating pockets where bacteria can thrive. The result is impaction, and it's miserable. Impacted wisdom teeth can cause swelling, infection, and damage to neighboring teeth. In severe cases, cysts can form around the impacted tooth, eroding the jawbone itself. And because wisdom teeth are so far back in the mouth, they're difficult to clean, which makes them prone to decay even when they do come in properly. Not everyone has problems with wisdom teeth. Some people's jaws are large enough to accommodate them. Others never develop wisdom teeth at all. Roughly 35% of people are born without one or more wisdom teeth, a trait that's becoming more common. Evolution is slowly phasing them out, but it's taking its time. The decision to remove wisdom teeth is surprisingly modern. For most of human history, people just dealt with them. If a wisdom tooth caused problems, it might be pulled by a barber or a healer using primitive tools and no anesthesia. If it didn't cause problems, it stayed. The idea of preventive extraction removing wisdom teeth before they cause issues only became widespread in the 20th century. And even that's controversial. Some dentists argue that removing healthy wisdom teeth is unnecessary. Others point to the high risk of future complications and recommend early removal. There's no universal answer. What's clear is that wisdom teeth are evolutionary baggage, a feature that once served us well, but now mostly serves as a reminder that our bodies are still catching up to the lives we live. They're called wisdom teeth because they come in when you're supposedly old enough to have gained some wisdom. The irony is, by the time they arrive, you're usually wise enough to know they need to come out. The extraction itself has become almost routine in modern dentistry, but that doesn't make it pleasant. The procedure starts with anesthesia, either local numbing or full sedation depending on the complexity. Then comes the incision, if the tooth hasn't fully erupted. The dentist cuts through the gum tissue to expose the tooth and bone beneath. Sometimes the tooth comes out whole. Often it doesn't. Impacted wisdom teeth are stubborn. They sit at odd angles, wedged against other teeth or buried in the jawbone. In these cases, the tooth has to be sectioned, cut into smaller pieces that can be removed one at a time. The sound alone is unsettling. A combination of pressure, cracking, and scraping that you feel more than hear. Even under anesthesia, the sensation of something being pried from your skull is deeply unnerving. After the tooth is out, the socket is cleaned and stitched closed. Then comes the recovery, which is where the real fun begins. Swelling peaks around the second or third day. turning your face into a lopsided balloon. Pain medication helps, but there's no escaping the dull, throbbing ache that settles into your jaw. Eating becomes a challenge. Soft foods only, nothing hot, nothing crunchy, nothing that requires actual chewing. The risk of complications lingers. Dry socket is the most common one, a condition where the blood clot that's supposed to protect the extraction site dislodges too early. When that happens, the bone underneath is exposed to air, food, and bacteria. The pain is intense, often worse than the extraction itself. It can last for days until the site is cleaned and repacked with medicated gauze. Infection is another possibility. Despite antibiotics and careful aftercare, bacteria can invade the wound. The area becomes red, swollen, and warm to the touch. Pus may drain from the site. In severe cases, the infection can spread to the surrounding tissue or even into the bloodstream, though that's rare with modern treatment. Nerve damage is less common but more serious. The roots of wisdom teeth sit close to nerves that control sensation in the lower lip, tongue, and chin. If a nerve is bruised or severed during extraction, numbness or tingling can persist for weeks, months, or in rare cases permanently. Surgeons take precautions, using imaging to map the tooth's position before operating, but the risk never disappears entirely. Despite all this, millions of people have their wisdom teeth removed every year without major issues. The procedure has been refined to the point where complications are uncommon and recovery is usually straightforward. But the fact remains, we're surgically removing part of our anatomy because evolution hasn't kept pace with our lifestyle. And here's the strange part. Wisdom teeth aren't the only evolutionary holdover causing problems. Our bodies are full of them. The appendix serves no real function and can become inflamed, requiring emergency removal. The tailbone is a remnant of our ancestors' tails, and it's prone to injury. Goosebumps are a leftover response from when our ancestors had thick body hair that could stand on end to trap warmth or appear larger to predators. None of these features help us anymore. They're just reminders that evolution is slow, messy, and never quite finished. Wisdom teeth are particularly frustrating because the problem is so widespread. Nearly everyone either deals with them or knows someone who has. It's a shared experience, a rite of passage that unites people across cultures and generations. You get your wisdom teeth out, you post a picture of your swollen face, you eat ice cream for a week, and then you move on. But underneath the routine is a deeper question. Why are we still dealing with this? Some researchers believe wisdom teeth will eventually disappear entirely. Studies show that more people are being born without them, and the trait appears to be hereditary. If you don't have wisdom teeth, there's a good chance your children won't either. Over thousands of years, natural selection could phase them out completely, but that's a slow process, and it offers no comfort to anyone dealing with an impacted molar right now. Others argue that we shouldn't wait for evolution to fix the problem. Gene editing technologies like CRISPR could theoretically be used to prevent wisdom teeth from developing in the first place. It sounds like science fiction, but the tools already exist. The ethical questions are trickier. Should we edit our genomes to remove inconvenient features? Where do we draw the line between medical necessity and cosmetic preference? And who gets to decide? For now, wisdom teeth remain a fixture of human biology. They're inconvenient, sometimes painful, and mostly unnecessary. But they're also a window into our past. Every impacted molar is a reminder that we're not perfectly designed machines. We're the result of millions of years of trial and error, adaptation, and compromise. Our bodies carry the weight of that history, and sometimes that weight sits sideways in the back of our mouths. The good news is that modern medicine has made dealing with wisdom teeth relatively simple. What would have been a life-threatening infection a century ago is now a minor inconvenience. Anesthesia, antibiotics, and advanced imaging have turned a brutal ordeal into an outpatient procedure. We've used technology to solve a problem that evolution created, and in doing so, we've bought ourselves time. Time for our jaws to catch up with our teeth, or for our teeth to disappear entirely. But until that happens, dentists will keep extracting wisdom teeth, and people will keep waking up with chipmunk cheeks and a freezer full of ice cream. It's not elegant, but it works, and in a way, that's the most human solution possible. We didn't wait for nature to fix the problem. We grabbed a pair of forceps and fixed it ourselves. The evolutionary mismatch between our jaws and our teeth isn't just a curiosity. It's a case study in how our bodies struggle to keep up with the pace of cultural change. Evolution operates on geological timescales, shaping organisms over tens of thousands of years. Human culture, by contrast, has transformed dramatically in just a few millennia. Our biology hasn't had time to adapt. This isn't unique to wisdom teeth. The same pattern shows up everywhere. Our spines are designed for walking on all fours, not standing upright, which is why back pain is so common. Our eyes evolved for scanning distant horizons, not staring at screens inches from our faces, which is why myopia rates are skyrocketing. Our digestive systems were shaped by diets rich in fiber and low in processed sugars, which is why obesity and diabetes have become epidemics. Wisdom teeth are just one example of a broader truth. We're living in a world our bodies weren't built for, and the faster our environment changes, the more pronounced the mismatch becomes. Agriculture, urbanization, industrialization, and digitalization have all happened too quickly for natural selection to respond. We're stuck with Stone Age bodies navigating a modern world. Some scientists call this evolutionary lag. Others prefer the term mismatch diseases, conditions that arise because our biology is out of sync with our environment. The concept applies to everything from allergies to anxiety. Our immune systems evolved to fight off parasites and bacteria, not to overreact to pollen and peanuts. Our stress responses were designed for short bursts of danger, not chronic pressure from jobs, traffic, and social media. The solution isn't to return to a prehistoric lifestyle. That's neither practical nor desirable. Instead, we have to acknowledge the mismatch and work around it. That means designing our environments to better suit our biology, ergonomic furniture to protect our spines, blue light filters to ease eye strain, diets that prioritize whole foods over processed ones, and yes, dental surgery to remove teeth that no longer fit. But there's also a philosophical dimension to this. The fact that we're imperfect, that our bodies are riddled with evolutionary baggage, is part of what makes us human. We're not static. We're a work in progress, shaped by the past and still adapting to the present. Wisdom teeth are a small, uncomfortable reminder of that process. They also force us to think about what comes next. If we can edit our genes to prevent wisdom teeth, should we? If we can redesign our bodies to better fit the modern world, where do we stop? These aren't abstract questions anymore. The technology exists, the ethical debates are already happening, and the decisions we make will shape the future of our species. For now, though, wisdom teeth remain. Imperfect, inconvenient, and oddly endearing in their stubbornness. They're a piece of our evolutionary history that we carry into the future, whether we want to or not. And every time someone gets theirs removed, it's a small reminder that we're not finished evolving. We're just doing it on our own terms, one extraction at a time. The story of wisdom teeth is also a story about change. Not just biological change, but cultural and technological change. For most of human existence, wisdom teeth were useful. They helped our ancestors survive in environments where food was tough and life was tougher. Then our world changed, and suddenly those same teeth became a liability. But instead of waiting for evolution to catch up, we invented solutions. We developed dentistry, anesthesia, and surgical techniques that turned a potentially deadly problem into a manageable inconvenience. That adaptability is what defines us as a species. We don't wait for nature to fix our problems. We fix them ourselves. And in doing so, we change the rules of evolution. Natural selection used to determine who survived based on who had the best teeth, the strongest immune system, or the most efficient metabolism. Now, technology has leveled the playing field. People who would have died from infections a century ago live full, healthy lives thanks to antibiotics. People with poor vision can see clearly with glasses or surgery. People with misaligned jaws can have them corrected with braces. Wisdom teeth are part of that story. They're a problem we've solved, at least partially. But they're also a reminder that solutions come with trade-offs. Every medical intervention carries risks. Every technological advance brings new challenges. We've conquered wisdom teeth, but in the process, we've created a system where dental care is expensive, access is unequal, and millions of people still suffer because they can't afford treatment. The irony is that wisdom teeth are often described as vestigial, a useless remnant of our evolutionary past. But they're not useless to everyone. In some populations, particularly those that still eat traditional diets, wisdom teeth erupt normally and function without problems. The issue isn't the teeth themselves. It's the mismatch between our biology and our environment. And that mismatch is a product of inequality as much as evolution. People in wealthier countries eat softer foods, develop smaller jaws, and require dental interventions. People in less industrialized regions often have larger jaws and fewer problems with wisdom teeth. But they also face different health challenges, many of which stem from lack of access to medical care. The story of wisdom teeth isn't just about evolution. It's about how culture, environment, and economics shape our bodies in ways we're only beginning to understand. And it's a story that's still unfolding. As our diets continue to change, as gene editing becomes more accessible, as medical technology advances, the role of wisdom teeth in human life will keep evolving. Maybe they'll disappear entirely. Maybe we'll find new ways to accommodate them. Or maybe we'll keep extracting them generation after generation because it's easier than waiting for nature to take its course. What's certain is that wisdom teeth won't be the last evolutionary puzzle we have to solve. Our bodies are full of them, and as long as our environment keeps changing faster than our biology can adapt, we'll keep finding new mismatches to address. The question isn't whether we'll face these challenges. It's how we'll respond to them and what kind of future we'll build in the process. The evolutionary story of wisdom teeth raises an uncomfortable question that most people don't think about. If these teeth cause so many problems, why haven't they disappeared already? Why are we still dealing with something that evolution should have phased out thousands of years ago? The answer reveals something fundamental about how evolution actually works, and it's not what most people assume. Evolution doesn't plan ahead. It doesn't design organisms for the future. It only responds to immediate survival pressures. And here's the critical detail. Wisdom teeth problems usually don't kill you until after you've already reproduced. From an evolutionary perspective, that timing matters more than almost anything else. Natural selection operates primarily on traits that affect your ability to pass on genes. If a genetic trait kills you at age 5, it gets eliminated quickly. If it causes problems at age 15, before you reproduce, it faces strong selective pressure. But if it only becomes a serious issue at age 25 or 30, after you've already had children, evolution barely notices. For most of human history, people didn't live long enough for wisdom teeth to be a major survival threat. If you made it to 20, you were doing well. If you reached 30, you were beating the odds. Wisdom teeth might have caused pain, infections, even death. But by the time they did, you'd likely already reproduced. Your genes were already in the next generation. Evolution didn't care what happened after that. This is why so many age-related problems persist in humans. Bad knees, deteriorating spines, declining vision. None of these things disappeared through natural selection. because they typically manifest after reproductive age. Evolution optimizes for reproduction, not longevity. Once you've passed on your genes, you're biologically expendable. But there's another factor that complicates the picture even further. Wisdom teeth problems aren't consistent enough to create strong selective pressure. Some people's wisdom teeth erupt perfectly. Others have minor issues. Some face serious complications. This variability means there's no clear genetic signal for natural selection to act on. If wisdom teeth killed everyone who had them, they'd disappear quickly. But because the outcome is so unpredictable, evolution can't efficiently select against them. Genetic traits don't exist in isolation. They're connected to other traits through complex developmental pathways. The genes that influence wisdom teeth development also affect jaw structure, tooth formation, and facial development. You can't simply delete the wisdom tooth gene without potentially affecting dozens of other traits. Evolution works through incremental changes, not surgical precision. Any mutation that prevented wisdom teeth from forming might also alter other aspects of craniofacial development in unpredictable ways. If those changes reduced survival or reproduction, the mutation would be selected against, even if it solved the wisdom tooth problem. This interconnectedness explains why evolution often produces messy compromises rather than elegant solutions. Your body isn't a perfectly designed machine. It's a patchwork of adaptations, each one layered on top of previous structures, constrained by developmental limitations and genetic trade-offs. Wisdom teeth are part of that patchwork, a feature that once served a purpose and now creates problems, but can't be easily removed without potentially causing other issues. The rate of evolutionary change also matters. Human jaw size has decreased significantly over the past 10,000 years, which sounds like a long time. But in evolutionary terms, it's barely a blip. 10,000 years represents roughly 400 generations. That's not nearly enough time for natural selection to completely eliminate a complex trait like wisdom teeth, especially when the selective pressure is weak and inconsistent. Evolution requires thousands or tens of thousands of generations to produce major anatomical changes. We've only been living in agricultural societies for a fraction of that time. Compare that to species that have undergone rapid evolutionary changes. Cave fish that lost their eyes did so over tens of thousands of generations in environments where eyes provided no benefit and cost energy to maintain. Arctic foxes that developed white coats did so under extreme selective pressure, where the wrong color meant certain death. Wisdom teeth face neither of those conditions. They're inconvenient, sometimes painful, occasionally dangerous, but rarely lethal before reproduction. That's not enough pressure to drive rapid evolutionary change. Some populations show signs of change. Studies have found that certain groups, particularly in parts of Asia, have higher rates of wisdom tooth agenesis, meaning the teeth never form at all. This suggests that, in some genetic backgrounds, mutations preventing wisdom tooth development are spreading through the population. But even in these groups, the trait is far from universal. Most people still develop wisdom teeth. The evolutionary process is happening, but it's happening slowly, generation by generation, with no guarantee of reaching completion. The situation becomes even more complex when you consider modern medicine. By removing wisdom teeth surgically, we've eliminated the selective pressure that might have driven their disappearance. People who would have suffered serious complications can now live healthy lives and reproduce without issue. Their genes, including those for problematic wisdom teeth, get passed to the next generation. We've essentially frozen evolution in place. Natural selection can't act on a trait that no longer affects survival or reproduction. This isn't necessarily bad. It means fewer people suffer. But it does mean wisdom teeth likely won't disappear naturally anytime soon. Cultural evolution has outpaced biological evolution by orders of magnitude. We went from hunting and gathering to agriculture in a few thousand years. We went from agriculture to industrialization in a few centuries. We went from industrialization to the digital age in a few decades. Our bodies haven't had time to catch up. They're still running on genetic software written for a world that no longer exists. Wisdom teeth are just one example of that mismatch. Our craving for sugar, salt, and fat made sense when those nutrients were scarce. Now they drive obesity and disease. Our stress response evolved to handle brief physical threats. Now it triggers anxiety disorders in response to chronic psychological pressure. Our immune systems developed to fight parasites and infections. Now they sometimes attack our own tissues, causing autoimmune diseases. These mismatches create what scientists call evolutionary medicine, a field that studies health problems caused by the gap between our evolved biology and modern environments. Wisdom teeth fit perfectly into this framework. They're not a design flaw. They're an adaptation that worked for millions of years and only became problematic when our environment changed faster than our genes could adapt. Understanding this doesn't make wisdom teeth less painful or less expensive to remove. But it does provide context. It helps us recognize that these problems aren't random. They're the predictable result of biological systems interacting with environments they weren't designed for. The question of whether wisdom teeth will eventually disappear depends entirely on how you define eventually. If you mean in the next few thousand years, probably not. The selective pressure is too weak, the genetic complexity too high, and modern medicine has removed most of the survival consequences. But if you mean in the next 100,000 years, or million years, assuming humans continue to eat soft processed foods and modern dental care remains widespread, then maybe. Evolution will continue working in the background, slowly favoring individuals whose wisdom teeth never develop or erupt without problems. Over enough time, that could shift the entire population. But there's a catch. Evolution requires stable environmental conditions over many generations. Our environment isn't stable. It's changing constantly, and the pace of change is accelerating. We don't know what humans will be eating 10,000 years from now. We don't know how genetic engineering might alter our development. We don't know if future societies will have access to dental care or if they'll live in conditions that make wisdom teeth functional again. Predicting evolutionary change requires predicting the future environment, and that's essentially impossible over evolutionary timescales. Some scientists have proposed that gene editing could eliminate wisdom teeth in future generations. CRISPR and other genetic technologies make it theoretically possible to modify the genes responsible for wisdom tooth development. Parents could choose to edit their children's genomes to prevent wisdom teeth from forming. But this raises ethical questions that have nothing to do with biology. Should we alter human genetics to eliminate minor inconveniences? Where do we draw the line between medical necessity and cosmetic enhancement? What unintended consequences might result from editing genes we don't fully understand? These questions don't have easy answers, and they'll become increasingly urgent as genetic technology advances. For now, wisdom teeth remain a reminder that evolution doesn't optimize for comfort or convenience. It optimizes for reproduction in specific environments. When those environments change, organisms are left with traits that no longer serve their original purpose. Sometimes those traits become neutral, neither helpful nor harmful. Sometimes they become actively detrimental. And sometimes, like wisdom teeth, they occupy an uncomfortable middle ground, where they cause problems, but not enough problems to disappear on their own. The real lesson here isn't about teeth. It's about the nature of evolution itself. Popular culture often portrays evolution as a force that perfects organisms over time, gradually eliminating flaws and creating optimal designs. But that's not how it works. Evolution is blind, short-sighted, and constrained by history. It can only work with existing structures, making incremental modifications based on immediate survival pressures. It can't start from scratch. It can't plan for the future. And it can't fix problems that don't significantly affect reproduction. That's why every organism on Earth, including humans, carries evolutionary baggage. structures, and traits that made sense in the past, but are now outdated, inefficient, or actively harmful. Your spine, for example, is a modified fish backbone that was never properly redesigned for upright walking. That's why back pain is nearly universal in older adults. Your eyes have a blind spot where the optic nerve passes through the retina, a design flaw that wouldn't exist if eyes had been engineered from scratch, rather than evolved through incremental modifications. Your appendix occasionally becomes inflamed and tries to kill you, despite having no clear function in modern humans. These aren't mistakes, they're compromises. They're the inevitable result of evolution working within constraints, building new solutions on top of old structures, never able to completely redesign the system. Wisdom teeth fit into this larger pattern. They're not unique or especially problematic compared to other evolutionary mismatches. They're just more visible, more commonly discussed, and more likely to require medical intervention during your lifetime. But they're part of the same fundamental story that explains why humans aren't perfectly adapted to modern life. We evolved for a world that no longer exists, and our bodies still reflect that history. Every ache, pain, and medical intervention is a reminder that evolution doesn't care about your comfort. It only cares about whether you reproduce. Everything else is negotiable. Understanding this changes how we think about health and medicine. Instead of viewing our bodies as machines that occasionally break down, we can recognize them as evolutionary products, still adapting to rapidly changing conditions. Medical problems aren't random failures. They're often predictable consequences of biological systems operating outside their evolutionary context. That perspective doesn't make treatment easier, but it does make the problems more comprehensible. It transforms frustration into understanding, replacing the question, "Why is this happening to me?" with the more productive question, "What evolutionary context explains this problem?" Wisdom teeth won't be the last evolutionary puzzle we confront. As our environment continues to change, new mismatches will emerge. As technology advances, we'll develop new tools to address them. And as our understanding of genetics deepens, we'll face new choices about whether and how to modify human biology. The story of wisdom teeth is really the story of how we navigate the gap between our evolutionary past and our technological future. It's a story about adaptation, both biological and cultural, and it's a story that's far from over. The practical implications of this evolutionary mismatch extend far beyond dentistry. They touch on fundamental questions about how humans should respond when biology and culture collide. Do we accept the discomfort as an inevitable consequence of our evolutionary heritage? Do we intervene medically to correct the problem? Or do we attempt to modify our behavior to better align with our ancestral biology? Each approach has its advocates and its limitations. The acceptance model suggests we simply live with wisdom teeth complications as the price of being human. After all, our ancestors survived without modern dentistry. This perspective has some merit. Not everyone experiences wisdom tooth problems, and those who do often manage without intervention. In populations with limited access to dental care, wisdom teeth rarely cause catastrophic health crises. People adapt, cope, and continue living. But this acceptance approach ignores the very real suffering that impacted wisdom teeth cause. Chronic pain, infections, and damage to adjacent teeth aren't trivial inconveniences. They affect quality of life, productivity, and overall health. Dismissing these problems as natural doesn't make them less painful or less worthy of treatment. Evolution may not care about comfort, but humans do. The interventionist approach, which dominates modern dentistry, takes the opposite stance. Since wisdom teeth cause problems and we possess the technology to remove them, we should do so proactively. This philosophy has led to the widespread practice of extracting wisdom teeth in young adults, often before any symptoms appear. The logic seems straightforward. Remove the potential problem before it becomes an actual problem. Yet this approach has its own complications. Surgical extraction carries risks, including nerve damage, infection, and rare but serious complications. Recovery is painful and inconvenient. And perhaps most importantly, Not everyone who has their wisdom teeth removed would have experienced problems if left alone. Some studies suggest that prophylactic removal may be unnecessary in a significant percentage of cases. We're performing surgery on healthy people to prevent problems that might never occur. This raises ethical questions about preventive medicine. How do we balance the benefits of early intervention against the costs and risks of unnecessary treatment? When uncertainty exists about future outcomes, who decides whether prevention or watchful waiting is the better strategy? These aren't simple questions, and the answers vary depending on individual circumstances, access to healthcare, and personal values. The behavioral modification approach suggests a third path. If wisdom tooth problems arise from changes in diet and jaw development, perhaps we could address the root cause rather than treating symptoms. Some researchers have proposed that encouraging tougher, less processed foods during childhood might promote jaw growth sufficient to accommodate all teeth. Theoretically, this would reduce or eliminate the need for extraction. This idea has intuitive appeal. It addresses the underlying mismatch rather than merely managing consequences. It's preventive without being surgical. And it aligns with broader health movements promoting whole foods and minimal processing. But the evidence supporting this approach remains limited and controversial. While it's true that populations eating traditional diets tend to have larger jaws and fewer impaction problems, many factors contribute to these differences. Isolating the effect of diet alone is difficult. Moreover, even if dietary changes could promote jaw growth, implementing such changes across entire populations presents enormous practical challenges. Modern food systems are optimized for convenience, shelf stability, and profit, not jaw development. Asking families to radically alter their eating habits based on speculative dental benefits is unrealistic for most people. The gap between what might theoretically work and what's practically achievable is vast. The reality is that no single approach addresses all aspects of the wisdom tooth problem. We're left navigating between imperfect options, each with its own trade-offs. This ambiguity reflects a larger truth about managing evolutionary mismatches. There's rarely a perfect solution because the problems themselves arise from fundamental incompatibilities between our biology and our environment. What makes wisdom teeth particularly interesting is how they've become a focal point for broader debates about human intervention in natural processes. Some view wisdom tooth extraction as a triumph of medical science over evolutionary limitations. Others see it as an example of technological overreach, solving problems we created through cultural changes rather than addressing underlying causes. Both perspectives contain truth. The scientific understanding of wisdom teeth continues to evolve. Recent genetic studies have identified some of the genes involved in jaw and tooth development, opening possibilities for future interventions. Researchers are exploring whether genetic variations explain why some people experience severe impaction while others have no problems. Understanding these genetic factors could eventually enable personalized predictions about who needs treatment and who doesn't. There's also growing interest in the microbiome of the mouth and how it relates to wisdom tooth complications. The bacteria living in and around wisdom teeth may play a role in determining whether impaction leads to infection. If certain bacterial profiles increase risk, perhaps future interventions could target the microbiome rather than removing teeth. This would represent a fundamentally different approach to the problem. Advances in imaging technology are making it easier to predict problems before they become severe. Three-dimensional scans can show exactly how wisdom teeth are positioned and whether they're likely to cause issues. This improved diagnostic capability could help reduce unnecessary extractions while ensuring that people who truly need intervention receive it in a timely manner. Better prediction means better decision-making. Yet even with improving technology, the fundamental evolutionary mismatch remains. Our jaws are still smaller than our ancestors. Our teeth still follow ancient developmental programs, and the resulting problems still require management. Technology can help us respond more effectively, but it doesn't eliminate the underlying incompatibility between our Stone Age biology and our modern lifestyle. This brings us back to the question of how evolution shapes not just our bodies, but our relationship with medical technology. Humans are unique among species in our ability to consciously intervene in biological processes. We don't merely adapt to our environment through slow genetic changes. We modify ourselves and our surroundings through cultural and technological innovation, operating on timescales far faster than natural selection. This capability creates new possibilities, but also new challenges. Every medical intervention, from wisdom tooth extraction to heart surgery, represents a choice about how we want to exist as biological beings in a technologically advanced world. We're constantly negotiating the boundary between accepting our evolutionary heritage and transcending it through intervention. Wisdom teeth force this negotiation into the open because they're common, visible, and require active decision-making. Unlike many evolutionary mismatches that simply exist in the background of our lives, wisdom teeth demand a response. Extract them or keep them. Intervene early or wait for problems. Use technology or accept discomfort. These choices make explicit the usually implicit process of managing the gap between biology and culture. Different societies answer these questions differently based on their values, resources, and medical philosophies. In countries with universal healthcare, prophylactic extraction is common because the costs are distributed across the entire population. In places where individuals bear the full financial burden of dental care, people often wait until problems become severe before seeking treatment. These differences reveal how economic factors shape our response to biological realities. Cultural attitudes toward medical intervention also vary widely. Some cultures embrace aggressive preventive measures, viewing the body as something to be optimized and managed through technology. Others prefer minimal intervention, treating medical procedures as a last resort rather than a routine precaution. These cultural differences reflect deeper beliefs about nature, technology, and human agency. The debate over wisdom teeth also intersects with concerns about medical overtreatment. As healthcare systems face increasing pressure to control costs and avoid unnecessary procedures, the question of whether millions of wisdom tooth extractions are truly necessary becomes more urgent. Some dental professionals have begun questioning the standard practice of routine extraction, arguing for a more conservative approach based on individual risk assessment. This shift reflects a broader trend in medicine toward personalized care that considers individual circumstances rather than applying universal protocols. Not everyone with wisdom teeth needs them removed. Not everyone who experiences minor discomfort requires surgery. The challenge is developing the diagnostic tools and clinical judgment to distinguish between cases that truly require intervention and those that don't. Economic incentives complicate this picture. Dental practices generate significant revenue from wisdom tooth extractions, creating potential conflicts of interest. When financial considerations align with recommending surgery, it becomes harder to trust that treatment recommendations are based solely on medical necessity. This doesn't mean dentists are acting unethically, but it does mean the system creates pressures that may influence decision-making in subtle ways. Patients, meanwhile, face their own pressures and uncertainties. Insurance coverage often determines whether extraction is feasible, regardless of medical necessity. Fear of future problems can drive people toward preventive surgery, even when the actual risk is low. Social norms also play a role. In communities where wisdom tooth extraction is routine, people may feel pressure to follow suit, even if their personal situation doesn't warrant it. These complexities illustrate how a seemingly straightforward biological problem, teeth that don't fit, becomes entangled with economics, ethics, culture, and individual psychology. The wisdom tooth story is never just about teeth. It's about how humans navigate the messy intersection of biology, technology, and society. Looking forward, several scenarios seem possible. Genetic engineering could theoretically eliminate wisdom teeth entirely by modifying the developmental programs that produce them. This would solve the problem at its source, but raises profound ethical questions about deliberately altering human biology. Who decides which evolutionary features are problems worth eliminating? Where do we draw the line between medical intervention and enhancement? Alternatively, improved regenerative medicine might make tooth extraction less permanent. If we could regrow teeth as needed, the decision to extract wisdom teeth would become reversible, reducing the stakes of early intervention. This technology remains largely speculative, but progress in stem cell research suggests it may eventually become feasible. A more conservative possibility is simply better diagnostic tools and treatment protocols that reduce unnecessary interventions while ensuring people who need help receive it. This doesn't solve the underlying evolutionary mismatch, but it would make our response more rational and efficient. Sometimes the best solution isn't eliminating a problem, but learning to manage it better. What seems certain is that wisdom teeth will remain part of the human experience for the foreseeable future. Evolutionary change operates on timescales measured in thousands of generations, far too slow to address the mismatch created by recent cultural changes. Even if jaw size were under strong selective pressure, which it probably isn't, centuries would pass before significant genetic changes occurred across human populations. This means that future generations will face the same basic dilemma we face today. They'll have teeth that don't quite fit in jaws that are slightly too small, and they'll need to decide how to respond. The technology available to them will likely differ from ours, but the fundamental evolutionary problem will persist. They'll still be living in bodies shaped by ancient selection pressures while inhabiting a world their ancestors could never have imagined. The wisdom tooth story ultimately teaches us humility about human progress. We've transformed our environment, developed sophisticated technologies, and achieved remarkable control over nature. Yet we remain fundamentally biological beings, subject to evolutionary constraints we can't simply engineer away. Our bodies carry the history of our species, and that history includes compromises, trade-offs, and imperfections that no amount of technological advancement can completely erase. Understanding this doesn't mean accepting suffering or rejecting medical intervention. It means recognizing that every solution creates new challenges. Every intervention has trade-offs, and the relationship between our evolved biology and our constructed environment will always require active management. Wisdom teeth are just one example of this perpetual negotiation, but they're a particularly clear one, visible in X-rays and experienced in dentist chairs around the world. The mouth has become a battleground, but it's not the only one. Throughout the human body, similar conflicts play out wherever our evolutionary past collides with our modern present. Each system carries its own set of mismatches, its own catalogue of features that once made perfect sense, but now cause problems. The wisdom tooth story is part of a much larger narrative about what happens when evolution can't keep pace with cultural change. Consider the back. Humans are the only mammals that walk upright on two legs as their primary mode of locomotion. This posture freed our hands for tool use and carrying, advantages that proved enormously valuable. But the spine didn't evolve for vertical living. It evolved as a horizontal suspension bridge, hanging between four legs with organs suspended beneath it. When we stood up, that bridge became a vertical column, and everything changed. The lumbar region, those 5 vertebrae in the lower back, now bears the entire weight of the upper body. The discs between vertebrae, designed to handle compression along one axis, now face forces from multiple directions. The result is predictable. Lower back pain affects roughly 80% of adults at some point in their lives. Herniated discs, spinal stenosis, and chronic inflammation become increasingly common with age. The back wasn't built for the job we're asking it to do. Similarly, our feet face challenges they weren't designed to handle. For most of human evolution, people walked barefoot or in minimal footwear over varied terrain. The arch of the foot, supported by muscles and ligaments, developed to absorb shock and adapt to uneven surfaces. Modern life changed everything. Flat, hard surfaces like concrete and tile, heavy, rigid shoes that restrict natural foot movement, hours spent standing still rather than walking. The foot's elegant biomechanical system struggles in this new environment, leading to plantar fasciitis, fallen arches, and a host of related problems. The eye tells a similar story. Human vision evolved in environments where most visual work occurred at variable distances, scanning horizons, tracking movement, identifying plants and animals at different ranges. Modern life demands something quite different. Hours spent focusing on screens and pages at fixed, close distances. Artificial lighting that doesn't match the spectrum of sunlight. Indoor environments that provide limited opportunities for distance vision. The result is an epidemic of myopia, particularly in developed countries where children spend more time reading and less time outdoors. The eye hasn't changed, but the visual environment has transformed completely. Even pregnancy and childbirth reflect this mismatch. The human pelvis faces contradictory demands. It needs to be narrow enough for efficient bipedal walking, but wide enough to allow the passage of infants with unusually large heads. The compromise satisfies neither requirement perfectly. Human birth is more difficult and dangerous than in other primates, with higher rates of complications and longer labour. The infant skull is still developing at birth, with soft spots that allow compression during delivery. The mother's pelvis is wider than would be optimal for locomotion, contributing to differences in gait and vulnerability to certain injuries. Both mother and infant pay a price for the evolutionary compromise between brain size and bipedalism. These examples share a common pattern. A feature that evolved to solve one set of challenges now faces different demands in a radically altered environment. The mismatch creates problems that feel like design flaws, but are actually the predictable consequences of rapid environmental change outpacing slow evolutionary adaptation. Understanding this pattern helps make sense of why modern humans experience so many health issues that seem almost inevitable. The medical response to evolutionary mismatch typically takes one of three forms. First, we try to fix the immediate problem through intervention. Surgery for back pain, orthodontics for misaligned teeth, glasses for myopia. This approach addresses symptoms but doesn't resolve the underlying mismatch. It's necessary and valuable, but fundamentally reactive. Second, we attempt to modify the environment to better match our evolved biology. Ergonomic furniture that reduces back strain, barefoot running movements that allow more natural foot mechanics, recommendations for outdoor time to support healthy eye development. This approach tackles the mismatch from the other direction, changing circumstances rather than bodies. It's often more effective than intervention alone, but it requires swimming against powerful cultural and economic currents. Third, we try to change behavior to avoid triggering problems. Exercise programs to strengthen back muscles, dietary modifications to reduce inflammation, screen time limits to protect developing eyes. This approach recognizes that we can't fully remake either our biology or our environment, so we must actively manage the interaction between them. It works, but it demands constant effort and awareness. None of these approaches provides a complete solution because the fundamental problem, evolutionary lag, can't be eliminated. We can manage its consequences, reduce its impact, and mitigate its effects, but we can't make it disappear. The gap between our Stone Age bodies and our Space Age environment is real and persistent. This reality raises important questions about how we think about health and disease. The medical model traditionally treats illness as deviation from normal function, something that shouldn't happen in a properly working body. But evolutionary mismatch suggests a different perspective. Many common health problems aren't signs of malfunction. They're signs of a body functioning exactly as evolution designed it to, just in an environment wildly different from the one that shaped that design. This distinction matters for how we approach treatment and prevention. If back pain is a design flaw, the solution is to fix the defective part. If back pain is an evolutionary mismatch, the solution involves understanding what the back was designed to do and either helping it do that or changing the demands we place on it. The first approach is purely medical. The second is biocultural, recognizing that health emerges from the interaction between biology and environment. Evolutionary medicine, the field that studies health problems through this lens, has grown substantially over the past few decades. It doesn't replace conventional medicine, but complements it by asking different questions. Not just, how do we fix this? But why does this happen? And what can we learn from understanding the evolutionary context? These questions often reveal insights that purely mechanistic approaches miss. For wisdom teeth specifically, evolutionary medicine helps explain why the problem exists, why it varies across populations, and why different interventions make sense in different contexts. It doesn't provide simple answers, but it provides better questions and a framework for thinking about trade-offs. Should we intervene early based on probability or wait for actual problems? How do we balance risks across different timescales? What role should individual variation play in treatment decisions? The answers depend partly on values, not just facts. How much do we prioritize avoiding potential future problems versus minimizing current intervention? How do we weigh individual autonomy against medical expertise? What level of risk is acceptable? Evolutionary understanding illuminates the trade-offs, but doesn't eliminate the need for judgment. These questions extend beyond wisdom teeth to virtually every medical decision involving evolutionary mismatch. They're questions about how humans should live in bodies that weren't designed for modern life. They're questions about the relationship between biological heritage and cultural innovation. They're questions that every generation must answer anew, because both the environment and our understanding of evolution continue to change. The wisdom tooth example also highlights something important about human evolution. It hasn't stopped. We often think of evolution as something that happened in the past, shaping ancient humans but no longer operating. That's incorrect. Evolution continues, but its effects are difficult to observe because genetic change typically requires many generations to produce visible results. Some evolutionary changes are occurring in human populations right now. Lactose tolerance, the ability to digest milk sugar into adulthood, has evolved in populations with long histories of dairy farming within just the last few thousand years. This is recent enough that the genetic changes can be traced and dated. It's also recent enough that global variation persists. Some populations have very high rates of lactose tolerance, others very low, depending on their ancestral relationship with dairy animals. Other changes may be underway, but remain difficult to detect. Are human jaws getting smaller? The evidence suggests yes, but the trend is gradual and complicated by environmental factors like diet that also affect jaw development. Is brain size changing? Maybe. But measuring this requires comparing populations separated by many generations, and confounding factors make interpretation difficult. Evolution is definitely happening, but determining exactly what's changing and why remains challenging. One certainty is that natural selection, the primary mechanism of evolutionary change, operates differently in modern environments than in ancestral ones. Medical intervention, abundant food, protection from predators, and many other features of contemporary life alter which traits provide survival and reproductive advantages. This doesn't mean evolution has stopped, but it may mean that different traits are now under selection than in the past. For wisdom teeth specifically, it's unclear whether there's currently selection for smaller jaws, fewer wisdom teeth, or different developmental timing. These traits might provide advantages by reducing dental problems, but the advantages are relatively modest in environments with modern dentistry. It's possible that other traits affecting reproduction and survival are under stronger selection, making wisdom teeth essentially neutral from an evolutionary perspective. The timescale matters enormously. Even if selection were strongly favoring people without wisdom teeth, producing a population where most people lack them would require thousands of years and hundreds of generations. Human generation time, the average age at which people have children, is roughly 25 to 30 years. Significant evolutionary change typically requires at least hundreds of generations, meaning thousands of years minimum. We're not going to evolve our way out of the wisdom tooth problem anytime soon. This slow pace of evolutionary change compared to rapid cultural change is the fundamental source of evolutionary mismatch. Culture can transform in decades. Biology requires millennia. The gap between these timescales creates the space where problems like wisdom teeth emerge and persist. Understanding this helps calibrate expectations about what evolution can and can't do. It can't quickly fix mismatches created by recent environmental change. It can't anticipate future conditions and prepare in advance. It can't optimize for modern life because it responds only to past conditions. Evolution is powerful but profoundly limited by its mechanisms and timescales. This means humans must actively manage the relationship between our evolved biology and our constructed environment. We can't wait for evolution to catch up because it won't happen on any timescale relevant to living people. We can't return to ancestral conditions because modern life provides enormous benefits we're unwilling to sacrifice. We must navigate the space between using knowledge, technology, and judgment to manage mismatches as effectively as possible. For wisdom teeth, this means continuing to refine diagnostic and treatment approaches, balancing intervention against watchful waiting, and recognizing that different people may need different strategies. It means acknowledging uncertainty rather than pretending we have perfect answers. It means accepting that some level of dental problems may be unavoidable given our evolutionary history and current circumstances. More broadly, it means recognizing that many common health problems aren't failures of medicine or personal responsibility, but predictable consequences of being Stone Age bodies in modern environments. This recognition doesn't excuse poor health choices or inadequate medical care, but it provides context. It helps explain why staying healthy requires active effort, why certain problems are so common, and why simple solutions often prove elusive. The wisdom tooth story, viewed through this evolutionary lens, becomes more than a curiosity about vestigial organs or modern dentistry. It becomes a window into the human condition itself, revealing the tensions between past and present, biology and culture, individual variation and population-level patterns. It shows us that being human means living with contradictions we can manage but never fully resolve. Ban Jiangshem, Part, Sauchitiet, Script, Janjok, Jiuqing, Tiojung, Yiukau Vesotu, Heineken Haitram, Haimoi Haitu, Valien Machket, Noi Voipartnam, Answer Tim Kiem Ko the Ban Quan Tam, Kau Hoi Moi Natsem Them, Same Them. This recognition shifts how we think about health and medicine more broadly. For centuries, the dominant medical model assumed that the human body, when functioning properly, should experience minimal disease. Illness was viewed primarily as malfunction, something gone wrong that needed fixing. This perspective made sense when most medical problems involved acute infections, injuries, or clear mechanical failures. But it struggles to explain why certain conditions are so extraordinarily common in modern populations despite advances in healthcare. Evolutionary medicine offers a different framework. It recognizes that many widespread health problems aren't malfunctions at all, but predictable mismatches between our evolved biology and novel environments. The body isn't broken, it's responding normally to abnormal conditions. This distinction matters enormously for how we approach prevention and treatment. Consider the broader category of what might be called diseases of civilization. Type 2 diabetes. cardiovascular disease, many cancers, autoimmune conditions, mental health disorders, and dental problems, including wisdom tooth impaction, all show this pattern. They're rare or absent in populations living traditional lifestyles, but common in industrialized societies. The shift happens within a generation or two of adopting modern diets and lifestyles, far too quickly for genetic change. These aren't separate, unrelated problems. They share a common root. Our bodies evolved in environments profoundly different from those most people now inhabit. The mismatch creates vulnerability. Wisdom teeth are simply one manifestation of this larger phenomenon, visible and concrete, but part of a broader pattern. The dietary changes that narrowed our jaws also transformed our metabolic systems. Hunter-gatherer diets were high in fiber, moderate in protein, and low in simple carbohydrates. They required extensive chewing and provided steady, slow-release energy. Modern diets flip this pattern. Fiber drops, simple carbs soar, and processing removes the need for extended chewing. Our metabolic systems, evolved for the former pattern, struggle with the latter. The result isn't just narrow jaws, it's also insulin resistance, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. The mechanisms differ, but the underlying cause is similar. Biology optimized for one set of conditions encounters radically different ones. The system doesn't adapt instantly because it can't. It responds based on programming written over millennia. Physical activity patterns show the same dynamic. Human bodies evolved for regular, varied movement. Hunting and gathering required walking long distances, carrying loads, climbing, digging, and performing diverse physical tasks. Modern life eliminates most of this. We sit for hours daily, move in repetitive patterns, and use machines to replace physical effort. Again, our bodies don't malfunction. They respond normally to reduced movement by losing bone density, muscle mass, and cardiovascular capacity. They store excess energy as fat because that's what they're programmed to do when activity drops and food availability remains high. The system works exactly as designed, but the context has changed dramatically. Sleep offers another example. Humans evolved sleeping in sync with natural light-dark cycles in environments with minimal artificial light and moderate nighttime temperatures. Modern life disrupts every aspect of this. Electric lighting extends wakefulness. Screens emit blue light that suppresses melatonin. Temperature control allows constant warmth. Noise and stress interfere with natural sleep rhythms. The consequences ripple through multiple systems. Sleep deprivation affects metabolism, immune function, mental health, and decision-making. These aren't separate problems requiring separate solutions. They're interconnected aspects of living in ways our biology wasn't designed to handle. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean romanticizing the past. Ancestral life was harsh, dangerous, and short by modern standards. Infant mortality was high. Infections killed routinely. Injuries often proved fatal. Starvation lurked constantly. Modern life, despite its mismatches, provides enormous benefits in safety, comfort, and longevity. But acknowledging benefits doesn't require ignoring costs. We can appreciate modern medicine, sanitation, and food security while recognizing they create new challenges. We can value technology while understanding it sometimes conflicts with our biology. The goal isn't returning to some imagined ancestral paradise, but thoughtfully navigating the tensions between our evolved nature and constructed world. For wisdom teeth specifically, this means several things. First, it explains why the problem exists and why it's so common. Narrow jaws aren't defects. They're predictable outcomes of dietary change. Impaction isn't bad luck. It's a mismatch between jaw size and tooth size that became prevalent when environmental conditions shifted. Second, it clarifies why solutions remain imperfect. We can extract problematic teeth, but we can't redesign jaws or eliminate wisdom teeth entirely without genetic engineering. We can recommend dietary changes during development, but we can't recreate ancestral conditions or guarantee results. We're managing symptoms of a deeper mismatch, not fixing root causes. Third, it highlights individual variation. Not everyone faces the same degree of mismatch. Genetic differences, developmental conditions, and life circumstances create diverse outcomes. Some people retain adequate jaw space. Others experience severe crowding. One-size-fits-all approaches fail because the underlying variation is real and substantial. Fourth, it suggests prevention strategies worth considering. While we can't return to hunter-gatherer diets, we can modify modern diets in ways that promote better jaw development. Encouraging children to eat harder, chewier foods might help. Reducing processed foods could matter. These changes won't eliminate wisdom tooth problems, but they might reduce frequency or severity. The evidence here remains preliminary. We don't have definitive proof that dietary interventions during childhood prevent wisdom tooth impaction. The studies would require decades and face enormous practical challenges. But the evolutionary logic is sound, and the interventions carry minimal risk. Eating whole foods, chewing more, and avoiding excessive processing benefit health, regardless of jaw development effects. This illustrates a broader principle in evolutionary medicine. Even without perfect evidence, understanding evolutionary context can guide reasonable interventions. We don't need randomized trials proving ancestral diets prevent every modern disease to recognize that moving dietary patterns closer to what our biology expects probably helps. We don't need definitive proof that exercise prevents all chronic conditions to know that regular movement aligns better with our evolutionary heritage than sedentary living. The standard here isn't certainty, but informed judgment. We use evolutionary insights to generate hypotheses about what might work, then test those hypotheses as rigorously as possible given practical constraints. When direct evidence is limited, we rely on mechanistic understanding, animal models, and observational data. We act based on best available knowledge while remaining open to revision as better evidence emerges. For wisdom teeth, current evidence suggests that extraction remains the most reliable solution when problems occur. Preventive approaches might reduce risk but can't eliminate it. Monitoring works for some people but requires vigilance and carries uncertainty. Each approach involves trade-offs that individuals must weigh based on their specific circumstances. The evolutionary perspective doesn't prescribe a single answer. It provides context for understanding why the problem exists, why solutions remain imperfect, and why different people might reasonably choose different strategies. It shifts the question from "what's wrong with these teeth?" to "why does this mismatch occur and what can we do about it?" Or, this reframing applies far beyond dentistry. Evolutionary medicine examines asthma, allergies, back pain, nearsightedness, and dozens of other common conditions through this lens. In each case, the question becomes not just how to treat symptoms, but why the problem arose in the first place, and whether understanding evolutionary context suggests better approaches. Sometimes it does. Recognizing that allergies partly reflect immune systems deprived of childhood pathogen exposure suggests interventions like reduced antibacterial product use and increased outdoor play. Understanding that back pain relates to spinal structures evolved for quadrupedal movement suggests core strengthening and varied postures rather than strict ergonomic positioning. Other times, evolutionary insights clarify limitations without suggesting solutions. Knowing why we crave sugar and fat doesn't make avoiding them easier. Understanding the evolutionary origins of anxiety doesn't eliminate mental health challenges. Context helps, but doesn't solve everything. The wisdom tooth case falls somewhere between. Evolutionary understanding explains the problem clearly and suggests some preventive strategies, but it doesn't offer a complete solution. We're left managing a mismatch that won't resolve quickly, using imperfect tools to navigate tensions between biology and environment. This is the human condition in miniature. We're animals shaped by millions of years of evolution, living in worlds we created within mere thousands of years. The gap between these timescales ensures that mismatches persist. We can minimize them, manage them, and adapt around them, but we can't eliminate them entirely. Wisdom teeth serve as a constant reminder of this reality. Every impacted molar, every extraction, every X-ray showing crowded teeth tells the same story. We carry the past in our bodies. That past doesn't always fit the present, and we must live with the consequences. Yet there's something almost beautiful in this struggle. It reveals both our constraints and our capacities. We're constrained by biology we didn't choose, shaped by forces we barely understand, carrying design features optimized for vanished worlds. But we're also capable of recognizing these constraints, understanding their origins, and developing strategies to manage them. We can't redesign our jaws through willpower or eliminate wisdom teeth through wishful thinking. But we can study the problem systematically, develop effective treatments, and make informed decisions about intervention. We can use knowledge to compensate for biological limitations. We can apply reason to problems created by blind evolutionary processes. This capacity for self-reflection and deliberate action distinguishes humans from other species. We're not merely products of evolution. We're products of evolution capable of understanding evolution and using that understanding to shape our lives. We can't escape our evolutionary heritage, but we're not imprisoned by it either. Wisdom teeth illustrate this dynamic perfectly. They exist because of our evolutionary history. They cause problems because of environmental change, but we manage those problems through knowledge, technology, and choice. We're neither purely natural nor purely cultural beings. We're both simultaneously navigating the space between. This navigation requires humility and ambition in equal measure. Humility to recognize our biological constraints, the limits of our knowledge, and the impossibility of perfect solutions. Ambition to keep studying, keep learning, and keep developing better approaches despite those limitations. For wisdom teeth, this means continuing research into jaw development, refining diagnostic tools, improving surgical techniques, and exploring preventive strategies. It means acknowledging uncertainty while making the best decisions possible given current knowledge. It means treating each case individually rather than applying rigid protocols. More broadly, it means embracing evolutionary medicine as a framework for understanding health and disease, not as a replacement for conventional medicine, but as a complementary perspective that asks different questions and sometimes suggests different answers. Why did this vulnerability evolve? What environmental changes created this problem? What does our evolutionary history suggest about solutions? These questions won't solve every medical problem. Evolution can't cure cancer or fix genetic disorders, but it provides context that often proves valuable. It explains patterns that otherwise seem mysterious. It suggests interventions that might not occur to purely mechanistic approaches. It reminds us that health isn't just about fixing what's broken, but about maintaining alignment between biology and environment. Wisdom teeth, viewed through this lens, transform from a simple dental problem into a profound lesson about human nature. They show us that we're products of history, living in the present, trying to build better futures. They reveal the tensions between what we are and what we've become. They demonstrate that being human means managing contradictions we can never fully resolve. Every time a dentist examines a crowded jaw or a patient faces extraction, these deeper truths lurk beneath the surface. Most people never think about them. They just deal with the immediate problem and move on. But the pattern persists, generation after generation, because the underlying mismatch persists. Understanding this doesn't eliminate the problem, but it changes how we approach it. When wisdom teeth erupt and cause pain, We're not dealing with a random malfunction. We're dealing with a predictable consequence of specific changes in human lifestyle. That recognition matters because it shifts our focus from treating symptoms to understanding causes. It opens questions about prevention rather than just intervention. Could we modify environments to reduce wisdom tooth problems? The answer is complicated. We can't return to ancestral diets without abandoning agriculture, cities, and everything that makes modern life possible. We can't redesign childhood nutrition to maximize jaw growth without unintended consequences elsewhere. Biology doesn't respond well to simplistic interventions. Every system connects to every other system. Change one thing and you affect dozens of others in ways you can't predict. Some researchers have explored whether dietary modifications during childhood could promote jaw development. The theory is straightforward. Give children harder foods to chew, strengthen jaw muscles, stimulate bone growth, create space for wisdom teeth. But the evidence is mixed. Some studies show modest effects. Others find no benefit. And even if it worked perfectly, you'd need to start in early childhood and maintain the regimen for years. Most parents aren't prepared to enforce that kind of dietary discipline, especially when the benefit wouldn't appear until decades later. There's also a chicken and egg problem. Did soft diets cause small jaws, or did small jaws make soft diets necessary? Probably both, in a feedback loop that's been running for generations. Once jaws started shrinking, people gravitated towards softer foods because chewing became harder. That made jaws shrink further, which made soft foods even more necessary. Breaking that cycle would require coordinated changes across entire populations over multiple generations. Not impossible theoretically, but practically unfeasible. So we're left with management rather than prevention. We watch wisdom teeth as they develop, assess whether they'll cause problems, and intervene when necessary. It's reactive medicine, not proactive. And that bothers people who prefer elegant solutions to messy compromises. But messy compromises are often the best we can do when dealing with biology that evolved for one world but lives in another. The question of whether to remove wisdom teeth before they cause problems remains genuinely difficult. Prophylactic extraction prevents future complications, but subjects patients to surgery they might never have needed. Watchful waiting avoids unnecessary procedures, but risks emergency interventions later, often under worse conditions. Neither approach is obviously superior. Both involve trade-offs between present certainty and future uncertainty. Guidelines have shifted over time as evidence accumulates. Decades ago, routine extraction was standard. Remove them early, the thinking went, before problems develop and while healing is fastest. Millions of teenagers underwent surgery based on this logic. Then studies started questioning whether all those extractions were necessary. Many wisdom teeth that looked problematic on X-rays never actually caused symptoms. The pendulum swung toward conservative management. Watch and wait became the new default. Now we're somewhere in the middle, recognizing that individual variation matters more than blanket policies. Some wisdom teeth clearly need removal. Others clearly don't. And a large middle category exists where reasonable dentists can disagree. The decision depends on multiple factors: tooth position, jaw size, existing crowding, patient age, overall health, personal preferences. No formula can reduce this complexity to a simple yes or no. Patients often find this uncertainty frustrating. They want definitive answers. Should I remove them or not? Will they cause problems or won't they? But demanding certainty where none exists doesn't make the uncertainty disappear. It just forces practitioners to pretend they know more than they do. Honest medicine acknowledges limitations. The best we can offer is probability, not prophecy. These teeth will probably cause problems. That intervention will probably help. But probably isn't the same as definitely, and the difference matters. This ambiguity reflects a deeper truth about evolutionary medicine. Evolution doesn't produce optimal solutions. It produces workable compromises shaped by historical contingencies and constrained by what came before. Wisdom teeth represent one such compromise, a feature that worked well enough in ancestral environments, but creates problems in modern ones. We're stuck with them, because evolution can't redesign from scratch. It can only modify existing structures, and sometimes those modifications create new problems, even as they solve old ones. The same pattern appears throughout the body. Our upright posture gives us free hands, but causes back pain. Our large brains enable complex thought, but make childbirth dangerous. Our immune systems protect against infections, but sometimes attack our own tissues. Every adaptation carries costs. Every solution creates vulnerabilities. Biology is trade-offs all the way down. Wisdom teeth might be uniquely visible examples, but they're not unique phenomena. They're symptoms of a broader pattern where human biology hasn't caught up to human environments. We evolved in one context, live in another, and deal with the resulting mismatches as best we can. Sometimes that means medical intervention. Sometimes it means environmental modification. Often it means accepting imperfection and managing symptoms rather than eliminating causes. This doesn't mean we're helpless. Understanding the evolutionary basis of medical problems often suggests better interventions. If wisdom tooth impaction results from jaw size reduction, then monitoring jaw development during childhood might identify high-risk individuals early. If dietary changes contributed to the problem, then nutritional interventions might help, even if they can't fully reverse generations of change. If genetic factors influence jaw size and tooth number, then genetic screening might eventually predict who will need intervention. But these possibilities remain largely theoretical. We're still figuring out which genes affect jaw development, how diet influences growth, and what interventions actually work. The science is advancing, but slowly, because studying human development requires decades-long studies that are expensive, difficult, and ethically complicated. You can't experiment on children's diets to see how it affects their jaws 20 years later. You can only observe natural variation and try to tease out patterns from noisy data. Meanwhile, dentists keep extracting wisdom teeth. Millions every year in a procedure that's become so routine it's barely questioned. Most patients recover fine. Some experience complications. A few face serious problems. But the overall system continues because it works well enough, even if it's not perfect. We've developed technical expertise at managing the symptoms, even if we haven't eliminated the cause. There's something almost absurd about this situation. We can send probes to Mars, sequence entire genomes, and split atoms. But we can't figure out how to make wisdom teeth fit in modern jaws without surgery. We can transplant hearts, cure diseases that were death sentences a generation ago, and extend lifespans dramatically. But we can't prevent a problem caused by eating softer food. The disconnect between our technological sophistication and our inability to solve this relatively simple problem highlights how difficult it is to intervene in complex biological systems. Evolution doesn't care about our preferences. It doesn't optimize for comfort or convenience. It optimizes for reproductive success in the environment where selection occurred. That environment disappeared thousands of years ago, but our genes haven't received the memo. They're still building bodies designed for life on ancient savannas, for diets of tough plant materials and occasional meat, for physical challenges that rarely exist in modern life. This creates a fundamental tension. We can't change our genes quickly enough to match environmental changes. We can't change our environments without creating new problems. So we're stuck in an awkward middle ground, managing mismatches that we understand intellectually but can't fully resolve practically. Wisdom teeth are just one example, but they're a particularly clear one because the problem is visible, common, and relatively well understood. The evolutionary perspective doesn't make the clinical decision easier. Knowing why wisdom teeth cause problems doesn't tell you whether to remove them in any specific case. But it does provide context that matters. It reminds us that this isn't a design flaw in any meaningful sense. It's a consequence of being evolved beings living in novel environments. It suggests that prevention might be possible if we understood developmental processes better. And it raises questions about other mismatches that might be causing problems we haven't recognized yet. What else in modern life conflicts with our evolutionary heritage? What other symptoms are we treating without understanding their deeper causes? How many medical problems result from environmental changes rather than biological defects? These questions don't have simple answers, but they're worth asking. Sometimes the problem isn't that our bodies are broken. Sometimes the problem is that we've changed our world faster than our bodies can adapt. Wisdom teeth won't teach us everything about evolutionary medicine, but they teach us something. They show that biology has history, that history shapes present function, and that understanding history sometimes suggests better solutions. They demonstrate that what looks like a simple dental problem often has complex causes reaching back thousands of years. They remind us that being human means carrying evolutionary baggage we can't simply discard. Every species faces similar challenges. Environments change. Bodies struggle to keep up. Solutions that worked yesterday cause problems today. But humans are unique in one respect. We can understand this dynamic. We can study our evolutionary past, recognize how it shapes our present, and use that knowledge to navigate our future. We can't redesign our jaws through conscious effort, but we can make informed choices about intervention based on understanding rather than just reacting to symptoms. This capacity for understanding is itself an evolutionary product. Our large brains, which make childbirth difficult and require extended childhood, also enable us to think about evolution, study medicine, and develop solutions to biological problems. The same evolutionary process that gave us wisdom teeth also gave us the cognitive tools to understand why they cause problems and how to manage them. There's a satisfying symmetry to that, even if it doesn't eliminate the pain. Looking forward, wisdom teeth research continues. Scientists study jaw development in different populations, comparing groups with different dietary histories. They investigate genetic factors that influence tooth number and jaw size. They test whether early interventions during childhood can promote better jaw growth. They refine surgical techniques to reduce complications. They explore whether wisdom teeth serve any useful function that we've overlooked. Some researchers argue that wisdom teeth might have antimicrobial properties or produce beneficial substances. Others suggest they could serve as stem cell sources or backup teeth if molars are lost. These ideas remain speculative, but they highlight how little we still understand about structures we've lived with throughout our existence as a species. We know wisdom teeth cause problems. We're less clear about whether they provide benefits we haven't recognized. The possibility that wisdom teeth serve useful functions complicates the extraction decision further. If they're purely vestigial, removal seems straightforward when they cause problems, but if they provide subtle benefits we don't fully understand, then extraction might carry hidden costs. Biology rarely includes truly useless structures. Even appendixes, long considered vestigial, now appear to play roles in immune function and gut health. Perhaps wisdom teeth are similar, providing benefits that only become apparent when they're absent. This uncertainty reflects how much we still don't know about basic human biology. We've mapped the genome, but we haven't decoded how genes interact to build jaws. We've studied tooth development, but we don't fully understand what signals determine tooth number or timing. We've performed millions of wisdom tooth extractions, but we haven't conducted the long-term studies needed to assess all the consequences. Medicine often proceeds on partial knowledge, making the best decisions possible given current understanding, while recognizing that understanding will change. Wisdom teeth sit at the intersection of evolution, development, medicine, and culture. They're biological structures shaped by evolutionary history. They're developmental features influenced by environmental factors. They're medical problems requiring clinical decisions. And they're cultural phenomena, with different societies approaching them differently based on varying beliefs about intervention, prevention, and what counts as acceptable risk. Understanding wisdom teeth means understanding ourselves as biological beings, navigating a world we didn't evolve for. The modern human experience involves constant negotiation between ancestral biology and contemporary circumstances. We evolved as hunter-gatherers, but live as office workers. We evolved to walk barefoot but wear cushioned shoes. We evolved to eat fibrous plants but consume processed foods. Each mismatch creates challenges, and wisdom teeth represent one particularly visible example of this broader pattern. The decisions we make about wisdom teeth reveal how we think about medical intervention more broadly. Some people prefer removing potential problems before they arise, embracing preventive medicine even when it means treating people who might never have developed symptoms. Others prefer watchful waiting, intervening only when problems actually occur, accepting uncertainty in exchange for avoiding unnecessary treatment. Neither approach is obviously correct. Both involve trade-offs between different kinds of risk, different values about intervention, different beliefs about how to live with biological uncertainty. These philosophical differences extend beyond wisdom teeth to encompass vaccination, cancer screening, genetic testing, and countless other medical decisions. Do we intervene early based on statistical risk, or do we wait for concrete symptoms? Do we tolerate discomfort to avoid surgery, or do we choose surgery to eliminate potential future problems? How much intervention is too much? How much is too little? Wisdom teeth don't answer these questions, but they force us to ask them. Cultural attitudes toward medical intervention vary dramatically. American medicine tends toward aggressive prevention, removing wisdom teeth routinely even in asymptomatic patients. European approaches lean toward conservative management, monitoring teeth, and intervening only when necessary. Neither system produces obviously superior outcomes, suggesting the differences reflect cultural values as much as medical evidence. Americans tolerate higher intervention rates in exchange for perceived security. Europeans tolerate higher monitoring burdens in exchange for less surgery. Both systems work reasonably well for most people, which itself reveals something important. Biology is flexible enough to accommodate different approaches. This flexibility shouldn't surprise us. Evolution doesn't produce single optimal solutions. It produces populations with variation, some individuals thriving under one set of conditions, others succeeding under different circumstances. Some people's wisdom teeth erupt normally and function well. Others experience severe complications. Most fall somewhere between these extremes. Evolution maintains this variation because environments change unpredictably. What works today might fail tomorrow, so populations benefit from including individuals with different biological characteristics. Wisdom teeth variation reflects this evolutionary strategy. Some people develop 4 wisdom teeth, others 3, 2, 1, or none. Some people's teeth emerge at 17, others at 25. Still others never erupt at all. Some teeth grow straight, others angled, some remain impacted. This variation isn't defective design. It's evolution's way of hedging bets, maintaining options in case circumstances change. In ancestral environments with harder diets, people with larger jaws and more teeth probably had advantages. In modern environments with softer foods, people with smaller jaws and fewer teeth might fare better. Evolution doesn't know which environment future generations will inhabit, so it maintains diversity. Understanding this diversity helps explain why wisdom tooth recommendations vary between patients. Dentists aren't being inconsistent when they recommend extraction for one patient but monitoring for another. They're recognizing that different biological situations call for different approaches. A deeply impacted tooth angled toward the second molar represents a different situation than an erupted tooth functioning normally. Evidence-based medicine means tailoring recommendations to individual circumstances, not applying universal rules regardless of context. The challenge is that individual circumstances include factors beyond current tooth position. Family history matters. Some families develop complications frequently, others rarely. Lifestyle factors matter. Athletes might prioritize avoiding future emergencies that could disrupt training. Medical history matters. People with bleeding disorders face higher surgical risks. Financial considerations matter. People without dental insurance face different cost-benefit calculations than those with coverage. Personal values matter. Some people strongly prefer avoiding surgery whenever possible. Others prefer eliminating potential problems proactively. All these factors influence the wisdom tooth decision, which explains why there's no single correct answer. The same tooth position might warrant extraction in one patient, but monitoring in another, because their broader circumstances differ. This complexity frustrates people seeking clear guidance, but it reflects the reality of medical decision-making. Simple rules work in simple situations. Complex situations require nuanced judgment. Wisdom teeth also highlight how medical knowledge evolves. 50 years ago, dentists routinely recommended extracting all wisdom teeth in young adults, believing prevention was always preferable to treatment. Accumulating evidence challenged this assumption, showing that many retained wisdom teeth never cause problems and that prophylactic extraction carries real costs. Current guidelines reflect this updated understanding, recommending individualized assessment rather than universal extraction. Future guidelines will likely differ again as evidence continues accumulating. This evolution of recommendations can feel unsettling. People want medicine to provide definitive answers, not changing guidance that differs from what previous generations received. But changing recommendations reflect progress, not uncertainty. We learn by observing outcomes, analyzing results, and adjusting practices based on evidence. The alternative, maintaining outdated practices because they're traditional, would be far worse. Medicine that doesn't evolve as knowledge improves isn't trustworthy, it's stubborn. The wisdom tooth story also illustrates how scientific understanding develops through multiple research methods. Anthropologists studying ancient skulls reveal evolutionary history. Geneticists analyzing DNA sequences identify genes influencing tooth development. Developmental biologists studying embryos uncover mechanisms controlling jaw growth. Epidemiologists tracking populations assess complication rates. Surgeons refining techniques reduce surgical risks. Radiologists improving imaging enable better diagnosis. Each discipline contributes pieces of the puzzle, gradually assembling a more complete picture. This collaborative process takes time. Definitive answers to seemingly simple questions like, should wisdom teeth be removed, require decades of research across multiple fields. Impatience with scientific uncertainty is understandable, but the alternative, acting on incomplete knowledge, often produces worse outcomes. Medicine advances by acknowledging uncertainty, gathering evidence systematically, and revising conclusions when evidence warrants. It's messy and slow, but it works better than the alternatives. Looking at wisdom teeth through an evolutionary lens also reveals something profound about human nature. We're biological creatures with evolutionary histories, but we're also conscious beings capable of understanding those histories and making deliberate choices. We can recognize that our bodies evolved for different environments without simply accepting every consequence of that mismatch. We can use our intelligence, itself an evolutionary product, to manage problems created by evolution. This capacity for self-reflection and intervention sets humans apart. Other species also live in environments different from those they evolved in, but they can't consciously address the resulting mismatches. Humans can study their biology, understand its origins, and develop solutions. Wisdom teeth become less mysterious when we understand why they exist and why they cause problems. That understanding doesn't eliminate the problems, but it provides context for making informed decisions. The wisdom tooth experience also teaches us something about living with biological imperfection. Our bodies aren't optimally designed machines. They're products of evolutionary processes that work through incremental changes, building on existing structures, constrained by developmental limitations, and always lagging behind environmental changes. The result is functional but imperfect. We get back pain because our spines evolved for quadrupedal locomotion, not upright walking. We get hernias because our abdominal walls have weak points where structures pass through during development. We get wisdom tooth problems because our jaws shrank faster than our tooth number decreased. These imperfections don't make us defective, they make us human. Every species carries similar baggage from its evolutionary history. Recognizing this biological reality helps us respond more thoughtfully. We can stop searching for perfect solutions to imperfect biology and instead focus on managing trade-offs as wisely as possible. Sometimes that means surgical intervention. Sometimes it means watchful monitoring. Sometimes it means accepting discomfort to avoid greater risks. The right choice depends on individual circumstances and values. Wisdom teeth also remind us that modern life creates health challenges our ancestors never faced. They didn't have soft processed foods, orthodontic treatment, extended lifespans, or routine dental imaging. They lived with their wisdom teeth because they had no alternative. Many experienced pain, infections, and complications we can now prevent or treat. We shouldn't romanticize ancestral life or assume that because something is natural, it's therefore good. Evolution doesn't optimize for health or happiness. It optimizes for reproductive success, which sometimes involves trade-offs that decrease quality of life. The modern ability to address wisdom tooth problems represents genuine progress. Yes, extraction involves risks and costs. Yes, some extractions are probably unnecessary, but having options beats having none. People can now choose to remove problematic wisdom teeth, rather than enduring chronic pain or life-threatening infections. That choice reflects medical advancement worth celebrating, even while acknowledging that we sometimes struggle to use our capabilities wisely. As we look toward the future, wisdom tooth management will likely continue evolving. Better imaging might enable more accurate predictions about which teeth will cause problems. Genetic testing might identify people at high risk for complications. Pharmacological interventions might guide jaw development during childhood. Regenerative approaches might address impacted teeth without surgery. Each advance will create new possibilities and new questions about how to use them appropriately. But some fundamental challenges will likely persist. We'll still face uncertainty about future outcomes. We'll still make decisions with incomplete information. We'll still balance competing risks and values. We'll still negotiate between our evolutionary inheritance and our contemporary lives. Wisdom teeth will remain a uniquely human problem, requiring uniquely human solutions that blend biological understanding, medical capability, and thoughtful judgment. For now, wisdom teeth serve as a small but revealing window into larger questions about human biology, medical decision-making, and how we navigate the gap between the bodies we inherited and the lives we lead. They're not the most important health issue we face, but they're one we encounter commonly enough to prompt reflection. Every person confronting a wisdom tooth decision is participating in a broader conversation about intervention, prevention, risk, and what it means to make medical choices in a world of uncertainty. That conversation doesn't have final answers. It has thoughtful approaches, accumulating evidence, and individuals making the best decisions they can given their circumstances. The wisdom tooth story isn't finished. It continues evolving as we learn more about genetics, development, and long-term outcomes. Each generation will face the question differently, armed with better knowledge, but still confronting fundamental trade-offs between intervention and watchfulness, prevention and treatment, certainty and flexibility. And perhaps that's the real lesson wisdom teeth teach. We're biological beings living in a scientific age, capable of understanding our evolutionary origins while not being imprisoned by them. We inherit bodies shaped by millions of years of natural selection, but we possess minds capable of examining those bodies, understanding their limitations, and making deliberate choices about how to live with them. Wisdom teeth, those troublesome molars that no longer fit comfortably in modern jaws, remind us that we're works in progress, neither perfectly adapted to our past nor our present, but capable of navigating that imperfection with knowledge, care, and the recognition that some questions don't have simple answers. They just have choices, made one person at a time, in consultation with the best evidence available, guided by individual values and circumstances, acknowledging uncertainty while moving forward anyway. That's not a failure of science or medicine. It's the reality of being human. Your teeth are historians you'll never interview. They've recorded every childhood fever, every drought your ancestors endured, every dietary shift across generations. They've catalogued stress, migration, and survival in chemical signatures you'll never consciously access. And they'll outlast nearly everything else about you, sitting in the ground long after your bones have returned to dust, still holding their secrets. 2 million years ago, teeth determined whether you lived long enough to pass on your genes. They still matter now, just differently. We've outsourced chewing to food processors and cooking equipment. We've delegated tooth maintenance to dentists and orthodontists. We've transformed dental health from a survival requirement into a cosmetic concern and a medical specialty. But beneath the modern infrastructure of dental care, the same ancient structures persist, doing their best to function in a world they weren't designed for. The story of human teeth is ultimately a story about time. Evolutionary time, which moves in increments of thousands of generations, shaping bodies for environments that change far more slowly than culture. Historical time, which tracks how human societies transformed their diets and lifestyles over centuries and millennia. Developmental time, which unfolds across childhood as teeth form and erupt according to genetic programs written long ago. And personal time, the brief span of decades during which you live with the teeth you inherited, making decisions about how to care for them based on incomplete information and competing priorities. These different timescales create the tensions we experience as dental problems. Wisdom teeth don't fit because evolutionary time hasn't caught up with cultural time. Children need orthodontic treatment because developmental time unfolds according to ancient patterns, while growth occurs in modern nutritional environments. Adults lose teeth to decay because bacterial evolution operates faster than human evolution, and our behaviors change faster than our biology. Understanding these temporal mismatches doesn't solve the practical problems. Your impacted wisdom tooth still hurts regardless of whether you understand its evolutionary origins. But understanding changes the nature of the problem. It transforms a random misfortune into a predictable consequence of specific historical processes. It replaces frustration with comprehension. It opens questions about prevention rather than just treatment. And it reminds us that biological problems often have deeper roots than they initially appear to have. This perspective extends far beyond teeth. The human body is full of evolutionary compromises, structures that worked well in ancestral environments but create challenges in modern ones. Our spines, our feet, our eyes, our immune systems all carry signatures of past selection pressures that don't always align with current needs. We're walking museums of evolutionary history, exhibiting adaptations to vanished worlds. Some exhibits function perfectly, others require constant maintenance. A few cause chronic problems we manage but can't eliminate. Teeth are particularly revealing exhibits because they preserve so well. They're literally built to last, coated in the hardest substance your body produces. This durability makes them invaluable to paleontologists reconstructing past lives, but it also means your teeth will be among the last parts of you to disappear. Long after your soft tissues have decomposed and your bones have crumbled, your teeth might still be intact, still carrying their chemical signatures, still recording information about how you lived. There's something both humbling and profound about that. Your teeth connect you to ancestors who died 2 million years ago. The same basic structures that helped Homo habilis crack seeds and strip bark are sitting in your mouth right now, modified but recognizable. You're part of an unbroken chain of dental inheritance stretching back through countless generations, each one passing slightly altered versions of the same fundamental architecture to the next. that chain continues forward too. If you have children, you've passed your dental genetics to them, along with whatever environmental influences affected their development. They'll inherit your jaw shape, your enamel thickness, your susceptibility to decay. And they'll face their own decisions about wisdom teeth, orthodontics, and dental care. Decisions shaped by technologies and knowledge that don't exist yet, but which will be built on foundations we're laying now. The question of what we owe future generations appears even in something as mundane as teeth. Do we have an obligation to preserve genetic diversity, including variations that might seem problematic now, but could prove valuable later? Should we use genetic engineering to eliminate dental problems if the technology becomes available? How do we balance individual choice against population-level consequences? These aren't purely hypothetical questions anymore. The tools to modify human genetics exist and are improving rapidly. Within decades, parents might be able to choose whether their children develop wisdom teeth, whether they're prone to cavities, whether their teeth grow straight or crooked. Those choices will raise ethical dilemmas we're barely beginning to grapple with, but they'll also reflect the same fundamental dynamic that's driven human evolution all along. The interaction between biology and environment, constrained by history but not determined by it. We've always modified our environments to suit our biology. Now we're gaining the ability to modify our biology to suit our environments. Wisdom teeth might be among the first targets, simply because they're painful, costly, and seem unnecessary. But they won't be the last. Whatever choices we make, they'll be informed by the kind of understanding that comes from studying evolutionary history. We can't make wise decisions about future biology without understanding past biology. We can't predict where we're going without knowing where we came from. And we can't appreciate the complexity of seemingly simple structures without examining how they developed over immense spans of time. Your teeth, those small, hard objects you brush twice daily without much thought, embody this complexity. They're products of deep evolutionary history, shaped by selection pressures that no longer exist. They're influenced by developmental processes that unfold according to genetic programs written for different environments. They're affected by modern diets, modern medicine, and modern behaviors that would be incomprehensible to your ancestors. And they're subject to decisions you make based on incomplete information, cultural values, economic constraints, and personal preferences. This layering of causation, evolutionary, developmental, environmental, behavioral, creates outcomes that often seem paradoxical or frustrating. Why do wisdom teeth exist if they just cause problems? Why do teeth decay despite modern dental care? Why do some people have perfect teeth with minimal effort, while others struggle constantly despite excellent hygiene? The answers involve genetics, environment, behavior, and chance, interacting in ways too complex to fully predict or control. But that complexity also creates opportunity. Because outcomes depend on multiple factors, intervention at different points can influence results. You can't change your genes, but you can modify your diet, your hygiene, your dental care, and your choices about intervention. These modifications won't guarantee perfect dental health, but they shift probabilities in favorable directions. They're examples of how humans navigate biological constraints, working within limitations we can't eliminate but can sometimes manage. The wisdom tooth story illustrates this navigation particularly clearly. You can't redesign your jaw or eliminate your wisdom teeth through willpower, but you can monitor their development, assess their trajectory, and choose interventions if necessary. You can't go back in time and eat a diet that would have promoted larger jaws, but you can make current dietary choices that support dental health in other ways. You can't eliminate all risk of complications, but you can reduce it through informed decision-making. This is what it means to be a biological being with conscious agency. You're constrained by your evolutionary inheritance, your developmental history, and your current biological state. But within those constraints, you have choices. Not unlimited choices, not perfect choices, but real choices that matter. The outcomes aren't guaranteed, but they're not random either. They reflect the interaction between your biology, your environment, and your decisions. Teeth make this interaction visible in ways that many other biological systems don't. You can see your teeth. You can monitor them. You can feel when something's wrong. You can observe the effects of your choices, whether that's better hygiene leading to healthier gums or neglect leading to decay. The feedback is direct and relatively fast. Unlike many health issues where consequences only appear years later, this visibility makes teeth good teachers. They provide immediate, tangible lessons about cause and effect, about the importance of maintenance, about the costs of neglect. Children learn these lessons early, even if they don't always apply them consistently. Adults continue learning them, often through painful experience when preventive care proves insufficient or life circumstances interfere with optimal practices. But teeth also teach subtler lessons about accepting biological reality. No amount of brushing will make wisdom teeth fit in jaws that are too small. No amount of flossing will prevent all decay if your genetics make you susceptible. No amount of care will eliminate all dental problems because some problems arise from fundamental mismatches between your biology and your environment. Perfect dental health is an ideal, not an achievable state for most people. The goal is management, not perfection. This acceptance of imperfection doesn't mean resignation. It means realistic expectations. It means focusing energy on what can be changed rather than mourning what can't. It means making the best decisions possible given limited information and uncertain outcomes. It means recognizing that biology is messy, that evolution produces functional compromises rather than optimal solutions, and that being human means living with contradictions you can manage but never fully resolve. Wisdom teeth will likely continue causing problems for generations to come. They won't disappear through natural evolution anytime soon because the selective pressure is too weak and the timescales too long. They might eventually be eliminated through genetic engineering if societies decide that's worthwhile and ethical. Or they might persist indefinitely, a permanent reminder of our evolutionary heritage, manageable through technology but never completely resolved. Whatever happens, the lessons they teach will remain relevant. About how evolution works through incremental changes over vast time periods. About how environments shape biology, but only slowly. About how modern life creates mismatches with ancestral biology. About how medicine manages symptoms without always addressing root causes. About how individuals navigate uncertainty when making decisions with imperfect information. These lessons apply far beyond dentistry. 2 million years ago, your ancestors used their teeth to survive in a harsh world. They chewed tough foods, processed materials, and lived or died partly based on their dental health. Today, you use your teeth for much gentler purposes, eating soft foods and occasionally opening stubborn packages. But those teeth still carry the history of what came before. They're still built for challenges you'll never face. They're still recording information about your life in ways you'll never consciously access. They're still connecting you to an evolutionary past that shaped who you are, even though you'll never visit it. So the next time you look in the mirror and see your teeth, remember this. You're looking at 2 million years of history. You're seeing structures that helped your ancestors survive impossible odds. You're witnessing evolution in action, caught mid-adjustment between past environments and present realities. You're examining the physical evidence of what it took for you to exist at all. Your teeth aren't just tools for chewing. They're archives, recording devices, evolutionary documents. They've tracked every major transition in human history without anyone asking them to. They've preserved secrets about diet, health, environment, and behavior across hundreds of thousands of generations. They've outlasted empires, languages, and entire civilizations. And they'll continue doing all of this long after you're gone, still holding information, still connecting past to future. still reminding anyone who cares to look that we're all products of deep history, carrying ancient structures into modern lives, navigating the eternal tension between what we were and what we're becoming. That's what your teeth said about you 2 million years ago. That's what they're saying now. And that's what they'll keep saying long after your final breath, speaking in a language only specialists can read, but that tells truths we all need to understand. We're not finished evolving. We're not perfectly adapted. We're not free from our past. But we're here. We're conscious. And we're capable of understanding the forces that shaped us. That understanding won't change your teeth, but it might change how you think about them, about yourself, and about what it means to be human in a world that's changing faster than biology ever could.